Hi everyone, in this video we're going to recap some of the great conversations that have been going on in the Humanizing Work community. If you haven't been able to stay as engaged with the community as you'd like, this recap will serve as a quick highlight reel with a bit of teaser mixed in. We'll link to the original conversations in the description so you can go deeper on any topics that spark your interest. Here are the highlights for May of 2022. Let's start off with our conference alumni community. And the topic of this session was culture signals. A little backstory on this one is that Richard wrote an article for the Scrum Alliance called Empty Chairs Aren't Real Customers, which we'll link to in the show notes. And in the article, Richard mentions that Jeff Bezos, the former CEO of Amazon, asked teams to leave an empty chair in meeting rooms as a reminder that the customer should always be part of the conversations going on at the company. So while this symbol has some good intent, it doesn't do a great job of changing culture, especially if Bezos isn't in the room, since there's almost no cost to adding that empty chair. Now, we use this term culture signal to describe ways that leaders can send strong signals about what matters in the organization, intentionally or unintentionally sending those signals. And a culture signal goes beyond talking about what we want to demonstrating what is actually valued. And the best culture signals demonstrate the hard trade-offs we make in favor of the desired culture. Those are the ones that are most memorable and sticky. So for example, at Zappos, they frequently celebrated ridiculously long customer support calls, some of these now over 11 hours long, as a signal that they value creating personal emotional connection with their customers. But not only that they value it, but that they value it over efficient resolution to customer complaints or requests. On those long calls, people are mostly just chatting, connecting socially, and that's valued.
So a strong culture signal demonstrates a trade-off, and Bezos' culture signal didn't really do that kind of thing. It didn't show giving up very much. So it's kind of an example of extreme integrity. How far are we willing to go to actually live out, hold to a value that we say we believe in, like caring about customers? Once we kind of talked about the concept, Peter had a coaching conversation with a volunteer participant emphasizing the key question, what is the behavior that would model the trade-off? And that gave a nice illustration for a lot of people on how you'd go about figuring out a culture signal in your organization. Definitely worth watching.
At the end of our conference community Zoom session, we were thrilled to be able to make a big announcement that we are hosting an in-person Humanizing Work alumni event in September of this year. The actual dates are September 27th through the 29th. And after 2 long years of virtual events, we're thrilled to be able to welcome everyone back to the mountains of Colorado for some advanced training. Check it out. Check out information on humanizingwork.com. Look for the information on the Humanizing Work conference.
Moving on to the second Friday, our Scrum Master community met to discuss your first moves as a coach with a new team or a team that's new to you. And this was one of those sessions where there was a lot of sharing and comparing experiences, and it produced lots of cool ideas, including which ant are you? Which clacky ball are you? The shut up and listen tour, 4 questions I always ask in my first one-on-one, the drop, keep, add, improve discussion, 1-day sprints, curiosity table, clarify my role, understanding altitude questions, playing the new naive person card, and let's draw the system, among others.
We also dug into the challenges people are still trying to figure out as they join new to them teams, including where do I start among many options? And how can I create a real team out of this group, including building trust, psychological safety, breaking out of silos. We talked about when there's a lack of vertical slicing, what do we do? An interesting conversation that came up around who's on what base, what roles are people ready to play or wanting to try out, and how hard it is to do so much of this remote, since so many of our favorite experience of doing it well involves something that's very social and in person.
As we talked through the challenges, there were some clear patterns to help know what to do. So check out the recording to learn more. We also created a thread in the community site for people to propose topics for future sessions. The link to that thread is provided in the show notes. The third Friday of every month is dedicated to our product owner community of practice. And our topic during this month was getting up to speed as a new PO and what we can all learn from that. This was a really fun session because Richard interviewed Tom and Amanda, both of whom had recently started new PO roles.
And Tom had a remarkably methodical approach as a new product owner, and he'd talked through it with us going into this new job. And so we're looking forward to seeing how it would play out. Amanda's approach, which we've become familiar with over years of knowing her, is more intuitive and honed by working with a variety of different clients in different contexts over the years. So we discussed what they felt were the core challenges for the product owner, what they tried and what hasn't gone as well as they'd hoped, and what some of their go-to moves are when they're working with a new team, including being intentional about building relationships and having one-on-ones with people. Tom had a great question for people. As a product owner, how can I ruin your day? We talked about asking why without asking why, using the I'm new card and how to balance that with adding value. The role of the value prop canvas and lean canvas, making things visible in service to the group and to you, continuous discovery, documenting assumptions. This content seemed to have wider applicability beyond the surface topic. And it was great to listen in as Amanda and Tom shared from their experience and see how other community members were asking questions and taking notes to apply what they were learning with their teams, regardless of whether they're on a new team or not.
And then our fourth Friday is the leadership community. And our topic that we picked for this session was, what is the role of performance management in an agile organization? And that was actually a question that came up in a speaker Q&A as I was participating in a panel discussion at Adam Weisbart's Agile Virtual Summit. And at the time, none of us knew exactly what the person meant by performance management, and so we kind of punted on the question. And so I wanted to dig into it because I think there's some interesting, I don't know how to say it, that there's some interesting stuff to talk about when we talk about performance management. So a couple of key points from this discussion are that performance management is still a real and important thing in an agile organization, but we might approach it a little differently, knowing what we know about humans. So we started the session with some real examples of situations people have been in where they needed some good tools for doing this well. And then we talked about strategies and principles for how do you address when a team member seems to be underperforming? How do you work through career progression and expectations around that? How do we align around expectations? And how would we know if they're being met? We talked about using the focused conversation method for conversations around this, and getting clear on what it means to make a good commitment and what it means to honorably break a commitment. And also spoke about how the cadence of conversations might be much faster in an agile organization as one example of how things might differ. We mentioned at least a half a dozen books and other resources for digging into this topic as a manager or leader throughout the conversation, some of them mentioned by us, some of them from community members. And like many of these discussions, it was a very rich and wide-ranging conversation about this important topic. It's definitely a good one to review if you weren't able to attend in person.
Existing community members can access links to all these recordings on the community space. Our communities are made up of alumni of our courses and our annual conference. So if that's you, and if you want to get in on the discussions as they happen, reach out and we'll get you the info to register.